Hey y'all, I'm Raina Harper, and welcome to EveRe-Watch Way, where I podcast a spell that takes a hold of you. For the show where I reminisce and recap the Nickelodeon fantasy series Every Which Way. Here we cover every episode of the show, and I go into detail on everything related to what happens with it, what I remember from keeping up with it in 2014 and 15 as a fan, and all the fun knowledge that I can bring in with it. Apologies for this episode coming out a bit late, life happens, but I'll do my best to pick up the pace going forward. Last time, with episode 2, The Big Rescue, Emma saw firsthand how to cast real spells by watching Maddie, who herself started to learn magic skills from her mom. They're continuing their war of wills and magic words, and getting better all the time, culminating in Emma successfully transforming her best friend Andy into a goat, but she won't be able to explain what's going on as her dad knocks on the door to call the two of them for dinner. Here we pick up following this cliffhanger in Season 1, Episode 3, The Big Chill, and the following episode, I'm a Witch. We're doubling up this time. I think it'll be more enjoyable that way. We'll see how this goes. So, unconfident in her ability to cast another spell to bring Andy back to human form, Emma desperately tries to stall for time, but her dad quickly gets on her case, especially when he hears goat bleeding noises through the door. Quickly, she pulls the excuse that Mike Wazowski did in Monsters Incorporated. They're rehearsing for the drama program. Dad quickly becomes impatient and says that he's opening the door on the count of 3. Feeling desperate as the very slow count to 3 happens, Emma puts all her might into thinking of the reversal spell, and casts it right as Dad has finally had enough and opens the door. Immediate cut to the opening titles. And not credits, as we discussed before. It's worked, in fact. Emma is relieved to see Andy in human form crawling on all fours on her bed, but she has to explain why she has a piece of Emma's homework in her mouth. One excuse later about it being chemistry homework full of nutrients like calcium, sodium, and magnesium, with a shrieking laugh of exaggeratedly drawing attention to her bad joke along with it. Francisco is left muttering whether his food is really that bad. So he leaves, and Emma is finally able to exhale, begging Andy to not be mad at her for transforming her into a goat. I personally say that Andy's already the goat, but there may be a character introduced in this particular episode that rivals her for it. Anyway, rather than be flustered or upset at having the spell cast on her, Andy is over the moon about it, and ready to be transformed into yet more cool creatures, her final bid being a saber-toothed tiger. Meanwhile, Maddie's mom, in a continuation of the scene in the last episode, can't seem to get Maddie to care about the necessary learning process of casting spells, up until she shares how they can be used to instantaneously change colors of nail polish. Maddie's on board then, and will soon take any opportunity to show her mom what she can do. The seed is planted here, and we'll see later that she reports back on all the mischief she gets up to, like magically stealing the other girl's shoes. Right after that, though, I discover an even further kinship I have with Andy, as she's ready to make bad puns. Like what Emma's dad would do. Resolve Emma's questions about magic being to call the witch doctor, and then gets great joy out of seeing the expression on Emma's face as she explains the joke. Then she's ready to explain to Daniel when he comes by, a lot of flustering things really converging on Emma all at once, that she's stressed out about her homework being done because a goat ate it, and pulls a snickering face in enjoyment of the dramatic irony. Not a quality that absolutely everyone appreciates all the time, in real life even, but that's just another reason why Andy is one of the most relatable characters. But Emma's focused on very real questions here. While the magical powers are certainly cool and all, it's a lot of pressure to get a handle on with only her and Andy to try and figure things out as complete novices. For anyone paying attention in this scene, though, an older woman listens in on Andy and Emma for part of their conversation, on figuring out what makes these weird occurrences happen when they do, and this woman may or may not be their key to things. But Emma's homework is the bigger crisis for the time being. Daniel's there to save the day, though, in Emma's rushed state to redo the assignment before lunch is over. Since she hasn't gotten a chance to eat, he'll toss grapes into her mouth every few seconds as she writes. This results in the most adorable scene thus far in the show, as they're both delighted by her ability to perfectly catch them, even when he's backed up several feet to try and push his luck. When he says that she is like freakishly good at this, she flirts back, "I'm glad all those summers at grape catching camp are paying off." That sounds just like what one of my friends from high school would say, so it's a moment that's both cute and fittingly representative of the banter at this age. They're really having a nice moment together. So guess who barges in? Maddie, flanked by her other panthers, yells at the pair for joyfully coexisting, sounds like her, and tries to rip Emma's assignment from her hands, which then fully rips in half. Side note, I think in both cases of the homework tearing, any teacher would probably understand if you just taped it back and explained that it was an accident, since the work is clearly still done and discernible. I mean, it's not the biggest issue if it were to just happen once, I imagine the teacher would think anyway. Though Maddie awkwardly tries to smooth over this toxic act to Daniel, he's turned even further against ever re-entering a relationship with her, and Emma stands up as well to her intimidation tactics against the new girl. So instead, Maddie's anger boils over, and she tries casting a spell on Emma to ensure that she's socially isolated at school forever, with her wording that she'll be frozen out. What happens is that Emma's frozen solid, her skin turned blue and frost appearing all over the skin. Maddie takes a second to process how her metaphor wasn't understood by the forces of magic, but this hurts Emma just as well for now. Daniel has left to get a stapler, but couldn't find one, so he just puts duct tape all over it in random places instead. Great idea, and very aesthetically pleasing indeed. But he sees Emma frozen solid and obviously freaks out. As Maddie continues to be her bullying self, Daniel calls over Mac and Diego, who lift her up together in the standing position and take her to the place that can help, the nurse's office. Here we meet the woman who was listening in on Emma and Andy's conversation earlier, Lily, the school nurse, played by Melissa Carcache, and she's apparently new to the area as well. She seems to be all too nonchalant about Emma having been suddenly frozen in ice, and explains to the boys that it's just in, quote, inverted cold, and kicks them out after they both start questioning things too much, and Mac clumsily hits on her. Looking at Emma's unmoving eyes, she makes a wry joke about needing to find a blowtorch to solve Emma's current state. Once Emma is all warmed up and able to move, wrapped up in a blanket and drinking some hot tea, she explains how the whole thing about being frozen suddenly happened after she was in a confrontation with Maddie, and Lily reveals that she's aware of Maddie, and that she's a witch. To which, Emma spits out her tea, not helped by Lily's knowing that Emma herself is a witch as well. To try and tamper down Emma's protestations that she isn't, Lily says that she's actually one too. This doesn't assuage Emma's fears enough to drop the act, so she tries to leave, still shivering and clearly shaken in other ways. Before she can walk out, though, Lily warns that she's aware there are witches who will want to steal her powers, if she is indeed the chosen one, and destined to have power at unprecedented levels. Tony is needed by the Sharks to do well in his tryouts to prevent one of the only other contenders, a burly and boorish kid nicknamed Gigantor Joshua, from being put on the team instead. Everyone is nervous about the prospect, which will have to be followed through on if he wins the race. Tony is nervous to race and almost doesn't make it in time, but comes through, so the rest of the Sharks literally push him in the water with his clothes on and get things underway. Indeed, Tony is the victor, and led onto the team, for which he's immensely excited to have a new social circle and something to be proud of. A solid guy, as Daniel previously said. Also, apparently the team was just let go by the principal after the smoke fiasco, as we were never directly picking up on the cliffhanger the previous episode left us with in regard to that. However, on this topic, the principal is fuming in her office about how the Sharks are too strong to take down as a group, so she'll have to divide and conquer. Again, what's your deal, lady? Why are you so mad about these kids who seem to do well as a swim team and only had this one smoke fiasco as an example of cutting up, from which you seemingly just let them off the hook without punishment? Anyway, So we get a quick moment of her musing that she'll start the takedown of the Sharks by focusing on Mac in specific. I'll start it with you. She says it like that. Sounds cryptic. We'll see what she does. At Emma's house, Andy and Emma work collaboratively on a scrapbook. Andy speculates that with the seemingly growing pool of known witches at Iridium High, it may stand to reason that she herself is one as well, and attempts a spell. Quote, I want an extra large pizza with lots of meatsa. To which they both kind of cringe and say that it was worth a shot. Emma genuinely feels the pressure, though, and Andy responds that while she herself may not have powers, she'll go to the ends of the earth to help Emma keep hers, to which Emma predictably melts. Hashtag Emandy forever. After this, Andy and the rest of the Sharks bring Tony to Daniel's house for a fun ritual. The Terrible Three, Daniel's younger siblings, have created a challenge in the garage which he must complete in order to race, known as the Tunnel of Doom, and Andy takes great joy in repeating this name ever more dramatically, in which he must find 5 inflatable sharks without setting off the traps of a disgusting nature, as is the T3's MO. Tony goes in and completes it, wearing a helmet and elbow pads, stepping over and under all the necessary tripwires, and is congratulated with the opportunity to ring the victory bell at the end. One that, knowing the T3, sets off a rig that dumps purple slime on him, since he somehow didn't suspect this would happen. Everyone celebrates that he's made the team, though. Emma, meanwhile, while picking up an order at a pizza place called the Seven, which we'll see a lot as a mainstay location, runs into Nurse Lily again, as she spins her chair around and says, Hello, Emma! She's startled, naturally, wondering if Lily followed her, to which Lily gives another quote for the ages, which I'm wondering why this hasn't been used more to mock people with an obsessive vibe. Quote, I just happened to see you leave your house, happened to see you head this way, so I headed this way. Emma is understandably creeped out, but Lily insists it's for an important reason. The chosen one needs guidance. Another great joke, Emma says she's just a normal girl, not a witch, and that she's picking up some normal pizza. And the employee behind the counter reads her order aloud. An extra large with cheese, pineapple, spinach, and anchovies on a whole wheat crust. What? Emma says to a bemused Lily. You've never had an all 5 food groups pizza? Real Buddy the Elf right there. If you took off the anchovies, I actually wouldn't mind giving that pizza a try. Maybe just one slice and not a whole extra large, and I'd be fine. And Emma gives yet another hilarious facial expression as she says that too. Lily is sympathetic to Emma's desire to live a normal life without this confusion, but she's not ordinary and has astronomical potential, she says. She asks as well if she's found her signature gesture. My what? Amazing Emma facial expression number 2 for this scene. It's apparently the particular hand motion used when casting a spell that every witch with powers uses. Emma, in her answer, reveals absent-mindedly that she does indeed have powers, when she was up to now insisting that she doesn't. Lily is overjoyed with the knowledge that she was already able to perform an animal transformation, a sign that Emma is indeed the chosen one as far as she's concerned. They walk back to Emma's house together, and she's eager to learn more now, so Lily explains some key details about being a witch and the nature of the chosen one, with the upcoming eclipse as an important element. A night coming up, which is the only opportunity for a sufficiently prepared witch to steal the chosen one's powers. Definitely not me, Emma says, but Lily promises the clearly overwhelmed Emma that she's there to help. However, she has to head home now, using her broom. Emma wonders aloud if that's real for witches, but Lily says not to believe everything on TV that you see about witches in a really jovial way. Haha. As a parting sentiment, Lily wishes Emma condolences about her mother, who was a great witch in her own right. What? Emma tries to follow up after doing a double take, but Lily is gone. Emma and her dad soon head to a swim meet to cheer on her friends, and they run into the Van Pelts, ending up sitting together. While the parents are all, hello neighbor, at each other, Maddie and the Panthers. Back up. They spent the day with Maddie's mom practicing spells, and Maddie was terrible at them in a few scenes that I felt comfortable skipping over describing. They're ready to try and shake Emma's confidence some more, but Emma tries to shake it off with a whatevs, and this greatly offends them, looking at each other to see if, quote, she just whatevs'd you. Writing from around this time. And Maddie vows to cast a spell to ensure that Daniel wins, making the rival swimmer doggy paddle his race. Emma protests that it's not what Daniel would want, and Maddie goes into a predictable diatribe about how only she knows his moral code, or at least any right to talk about him. She goes ahead and casts the spell, but it hits Daniel instead, to which Maddie seems smug about having accomplished her goal anyway. So maybe just going against Emma's feelings in any way is enough for her. Typical. And that's the note we end episode 3 on, but we're continuing straight ahead into episode 4. Daniel's confused, finding himself unable to swim the way that he needs to, and everyone on his side is exasperated at the spectacle. Emma is particularly upset, and demands Maddie undo the spell, and even gets in a taunt that maybe she's not a good enough witch to know how. But Maddie effortlessly flips it to not wanting to show Emma how to, and when Emma asks if she's really that spiteful, all 3 of the Panthers say, yes, in unison. So Emma decides to do the first thing she thinks of. Cast a spell that makes Daniel swim faster, even if it's still in doggy paddle. She then starts a cheer, which all the Sharks' side joins in on, which of course means Maddie and the Panthers have to as well in order to keep up appearances. Most of everyone is confused, but excited to see that Daniel gains ground, and he eventually wins the race. It's Daniel's fastest time ever, but he can't explain what went on, and he'll probably get disqualified. There's a yelling match with the ref spurred on by the other team to try and settle this, as we see. Lily also saw what went on, and this gives him a pause for what she did, even if provoked by Maddie. The 2 of them are recklessly drawing attention to their magic, Lily says. Later, Coach Julio, played by Rafael de la Fuente, breaks the news that Daniel has been disqualified for swimming the wrong stroke. But Daniel appreciates, as he heard, Maddie's great cheerleading efforts, and she milks a hug with him to build up her ego and taunt Andy and Emma. Now, she says to the Panthers, they need to go shopping to celebrate their own amazing cheerleading and get Daniel's favorite color wrong when she says she'll wear it for him. Cool. Never change, Maddie. Very quickly, an even worse problem arises. As part of a bet with the other team, Daniel, who lost the race, now has to do a salsa dance, which he doesn't know how to do, in front of everyone for humiliation. He's saved by Emma, and later everyone else, joining in and guiding him, which takes the wind out of the other team's sails, and they leave. The Panthers watched this unfold on a live stream from Maddie's room, I assume put out by Misinformation/Gigi, which somehow has multiple angles to cut between. You know what, I actually can believe that she'd put together a multi-camera setup now that I think of it. Sophie, watching this, is sparked to show how much she loves salsa dancing, launching into a routine and counting in Spanish. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You know what, maybe I'll keep a tally of how many times Sophie demonstrates how cultured she is underneath all her ignorance. Maddie then decides to use magic to wreck the chemistry between Daniel and Emma. The whole support effort with the dancing endears Daniel to Emma, and he treats her to pizza out of thanks. You saved me, he says, and he shares how strange it was to not be able to swim properly during the race, as if bound by magic. Emma exaggeratedly puts on how magic doesn't exist, that'd just be silly, and Daniel says that it would be silly and bad because that would give some people an unfair advantage. And connecting over a shared sense of good character in each other, they share a nice moment. But when Emma spills her drink and leaves for a moment to get napkins, Maddie teleports herself in, shrunken down to be 5 inches tall and ready to spy, or in this case, bully Emma further in the proceedings. Emma is flustered at Maddie coming in yet again, as well as the possibility of magic being revealed to Daniel through her stunt here, so she casts a spell to trap her in the ketchup bottle in front of her, and grabs it before Daniel sits back down, to conceal her. He's confused why Emma would put ketchup on pizza, but she shrugs that off and says that it's hard to get it out of the bottle, to which he suggests shaking it and hitting it on the table. Tables, in that vein, are turned, and Maddie is covered in ketchup, and she can't get out of there by magic fast enough. Katie is weirded out by Maddie showing back up, covered in ketchup, but Sophie oh my god, she holds out a french fry and smears some ketchup onto it from Maddie's skin. Okay then, Maddie's rage is doubled. In walking home that night, Emma and Daniel connect some more over the day's events, including Emma covering a bit for Maddie, having actually been the one to start the cheer, and in saying their goodbyes, Daniel grabs Emma's hand. She smiles, and her feelings unwittingly create a bright rainbow in the night sky through the magic that she can't control yet. Daniel makes note of how crazy it is, and Emma, while probably at least relieved it manifested this way instead of with more butterflies, she's flustered nonetheless about drawing attention. But she's interrupted in her explanation by Daniel's phone ringing. His coach has called and said his disqualification has been overturned, meaning he won his race after all. Their goodbye is made awkward for Emma by Daniel resolving he'll tell Maddie the news, but the rainbow doesn't disappear right away. Emma at least has some satisfaction. Andy advises Emma at school the next day that she should practice magic and become unstoppable. That's how she says it. But Emma's reluctant to, given that thus far only caused her problems, or for Maddie to successfully take credit for her successes. Emma remembers that she could maybe just let another witch steal her powers during the eclipse if she's actually the chosen one. And let's not faff about here, she obviously is. Every clue leads that way, even if you haven't seen any of this show before. It's as signposted as it can possibly be. But Andy reminds her that Maddie would almost certainly be first in line to take those powers. She's then told by Lily, visiting her office, that having the Hexerin, a special magic book that glows, which Maddie's mom has mentioned before, would be indicative of who the chosen one is. So Andy and Emma look around for it in her bedroom, since she remembers it from when it glowed as they first moved into the house. And during this, Daniel asks Emma to come over for dinner with his whole family, which she's eager to do, even if Andy knows it's warning signs for the jobs babysitting the terrible 3 that she'll soon be tasked with. Emma's eager to make a good first impression, maybe involving magic. But we can't get to that right now, because key developments are happening with Andy's fellow shark, Diego. He's studying with Daniel at the Miller house, worried about just how badly he'll do in math because of how he doesn't even know about the, quote, letters in math problems, aka variables. But just like Emma, his feelings are manifesting in a strange way. This is something different though. No butterflies are conjuring anything for that matter, and Maddie goes into a predictable diatribe about only she knows. And Maddie goes into a predictable diatribe about only how only she knows his moral code. Instead, he suddenly finds the notebook he's holding frozen in ice in a split second. He shakes it around, it's stuck to his hand, but then it comes loose and shatters on the ground, leaving both him and Daniel bewildered. So, in order to solve this, they call up the most scientific mind they know, Tony. His Occam's razor explanation is that the T3 must have dipped the notebook in a vat of liquid nitrogen, which of course they indeed happen to have. That's a satisfying enough explanation for now, but Diego is worried that there's something even weirder going on with him. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it, but he might just have powers himself, even different from the ones we already know. With Maddie and the Panthers, a discussion happens about how to get Daniel back for Maddie, and she resolves that it's another perfect opportunity to utilize her new magical skills. She gets her underlings to grab one of her mom's store-bought pecan pies from the fridge, which we remember from the first episode trying to get with Emma's dad, and casts a spell to make sure that whoever eats it will fall in love with her. Then, she'll crash the party at the Miller house that night and make sure Daniel has some. Meanwhile, Emma, once the Hexerin reveals itself to her by flying to her from the shelf and showing its ancient mystical glowing in wind, decides to read from its plethora of spells and use one to do herself up for the evening and make a good impression, as I said. One spell from it can make her look like anyone's style, so she misguidedly chooses Nicki Minaj. She does it, bright pink wig and all, right as Daniel comes to pick her up. "Are you sure you're ready to come over to my house?" With my parents? Daniel asks. She awkwardly affirms, doing some nervous laughter, and this leads to everyone at the family dinner table trying not to laugh or to cringe too much. And more happy than anyone, as it turns out, is Maddie, as she comes to the door to join the meal too. She sees plenty of fodder for making fun of Emma here. And she has her pie. Dun dun dun. That brings us to the end of our show for today, and we'll pick up next time with more Every Which Way episodes. Thanks so much for listening. It's been so amazing to do this show and hear everyone's feedback so far. I hope you've enjoyed what you hear, so leave a comment, rating, and a follow or subscription on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify, and follow on Facebook. Sorry about some problems with the Instagram. I'm doing my best to fix it. So just search EveRe-Watch Way, EveRe-Watch Way. I look forward to growing the show and hearing from you, so share it around with fellow fans and people you know. Best magical wishes until next time.